I'd like to invite a member of our Board of Trustees, longtime member of our congregation, also a member of the Cherokee Nation, Deborah Fritts, to come light our chalice this morning.
As we light our chalice, we turn our thoughts to gratitude for all the gifts of life. Everything we need to live a good life is here on Mother Earth. For the love that is still around us, we gather our minds together as one and give thanks. Now our minds are one.
This month, November, is Native American History Month here across America. And so we are celebrating this history this month and joining with others to acknowledge the Native American communities of this land, both past, present, and with a heart towards future generations. Oklahoma, as you may know, which formerly known as Indian Territory, is home of 39 federally recognized Native American tribes. The city of Tulsa is within the tribal boundaries of 3 of these federally recognized tribes: the Cherokee Nation, the Muscogee Creek Nation, and the Osage Nation. All Souls Church, where we are right now, is on Muscogee Creek Nation land. We recognize their history. We honor their commitment to our community and to our land, and we honor the Native peoples today, not only with our acknowledgement of their presence among us and the property and land of which we are on, but also with our ongoing commitment to affirm and support Indigenous sovereignty and Indigenous history and Indigenous experiences here in Oklahoma and America. So let us welcome all of our Native American guests and members today.
I'd like to start out by saying Mado for celebrating Native American Month in Tulsa, Muscogee Creek Indian Nation Territory. And thank you to my home church, Springfield, for joining us and singing. This is where I grew up. This is how I grew up in this church with them. Yesterday was a special day for our tribe. Each year we put aside a day to honor our remaining 16 ceremonial grounds and the people who continue our traditions and our culture. This day is usually set in the late fall at the Council Oak Park as the birthplace of Tulsa. The name Tulsa is a shortened pronunciation of TVLSE, which is a part of Tallahassee meaning Old Town, which later became City of Tulsa. The Creeks had been forced to leave their homelands, as known as the Trail of Tears in southeastern United States, and travel to land across the Mississippi River, where the government had granted us land in what is now known as Indian Territory. In 1836, there is discrepancies in dates of our arrival. The Lochaboga tribal town chose an oak tree on top of a hill that overlooked the Arkansas River that was set as the site of the council ground. They lit a new ceremonial fire using coals they had carried on their journey. They held the tribal ceremonies, feasts, and games. The site continued to be used for these events until around 1896. Sometime around statehood, they extinguished the ceremonial fire of the Lochaboga, and many members migrated south to Hughes County to their sister ground, Achinahutchee, Cedar River, New Tulsa. They were closely related to Old Tulsa near Eufaula, Hickory ground, and Okfuskee. Achinahutchee, New Tulsa, is my family's ceremonial ground. Our family ground has been inactive since 2018 with the passing of our Miko, Jeff Fixico. Out of 44 ceremonial grounds that were removed from our homelands, only 16 remain. 10 are active now. Arbika, Duck Creek, Fish Pond, Holubby, Hickory Ground, Iron Post, Kellyville, Peach Ground, New Yucca, Okfuskee, Tallahassee, Wakwai, Wheelgulfkee, Tallahassee, Cromwell, Greenleaf, and Achinahuchee, New Tulsa. The Council Oak is believed to have been a mature tree when the Creeks arrived, although the age is not known. The same tree is still presently thriving. The tree was listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The tree is placed at 18th Street in South Cheyenne, Tulsa. A lot of people believe this oak tree is sacred and represents our people in a lot of ways, mostly being strong and resilient. While working in our tribal newspaper, after every bad storm, tornado, ice storm, I would drive up and check on and take pictures of this tree. And one of the worst ice storms that hit Tulsa, was so bad the Tulsa world was closed. I drove up, took a picture of the tree. Not one branch was broken. There was trees split all around the whole property. And while I coordinated the event as an employee, I chose several speakers that spoke our language. One gentleman that was one of my favorite speakers was the late Eunice Hill. In 1970, he worked for PSO. They were sent out to cut this tree down. When they arrived at the site, he and his crew of mostly Muscogee Creek men refused to touch the tree because they knew the history behind this tree and this site. They told their boss to contact the city of Tulsa and mayor's office. They verified this was a landmark. This group of Creek men saved this tree. In 2007, the state of Oklahoma was celebrating our centennial and statehood. We as natives were celebrating that we survived treaties, assimilation, and statehood, that we were still thriving in culture, tradition, and sovereignty. In 2008, the Oklahoma Centennial Commission sponsored a Trail of Tears monument honoring the Creeks suffering as they were forced to endure the trek from Alabama to Indian Territory. The sculpture unveiled in 2009 depicts a flame rising from a hearth. It is called The Morning Prayer. It's created by Muscogee Creek artist Dan Brook. In 2010, a placement of more statues were placed to represent more of our culture and children playing stickball. I assisted our then Chief ADLS in forming a committee to make sure our ceremonial ground Mikos voices were heard and that their value, opinion, advice, and input were put into this project. The name of this set of statues is called Stickball, not just a game. At some time, families had to choose between the ceremonial way of life or Christian church life. We, my sisters and I, were raised to respect both ways, born to a family of parents and grandparents, one of being traditional, one Christian. Our grandmother was the daughter of a Baptist preacher, married a traditional man, a Hillis-Haya, a medicine man, and our mother being traditional and our dad a Christian. We lived both lives growing up that way. On top of being part of the Indian Relocation Act of 1956 program and boarding school kids, we grew up in Dallas. Our parents never let us forget who we were or where we came from. We came back for ceremonial dances and Fourth Sunday, a lot of times in the same weekend. Some families had to choose one or the other. Even in this day and time, some churches, church leaders still treat those individuals different or refer that we live to the old ways and they're not acceptable in heaven. My sisters and relatives have been at funeral services and have been targeted as examples of such with us walking out of those services. We were lucky to be raised by a church, my dad's church, that never treated us different for practicing our old ways. They never made us feel guilty for anything. They've always been there with open arms, reassuring that they would be there when we were ready to come back because they knew we would be back. That is how every worship place should be. That's our family, Springfield Church. And that's who is with us today singing our church songs. That's the history of our Council Oak and our way of life from my point of view. Thank you.
Hello, Chakma. My name is Lee Rumley, and I am a proud citizen of the Chickasaw Nation. Chickasaw has always been an oral language, and storytellers pass down everything about the tribe from its language to its stories, history, and legends by the spoken word. The language is a Muskogean language that a related group of indigenous peoples utilized, including the Chickasaw, Choctaw, Seminole, and Creeks. To find their homeland, the tribes migrated across the continent. The Muscogean tribes were confined chiefly to the Gulf states east of almost all of Mississippi and Alabama and parts of Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina. While all the Oklahoma tribes have a migration story, a version of the Chickasaw migration story I'm sharing with you today. This migration was prior to the Trail of Tears. Naniwaya, the home of the Muscogee people. From the land beyond the setting sun came the Muscogee people, bearing the bones of their ancestors and following a sacred leaning pole. Oppressed by their circumstances, the people yearned for a new land in which to grow their corn. Inspired by the Great Spirit who provided them with a sacred pole, they began a journey to the new land, following the pole as it pointed the way to the northeast. For perhaps 43 years, they followed the pole as it pointed the way. They planted their corn in the new ground along the trail, tarrying long enough to harvest the life-sustaining grain. The arduous trail led them across mountains, deserts, and turbulent rivers. They found fertile valleys along the way, but it was not in their homeland, and the pole continued its compelling lean, always to the northeast. The beloved warriors, as the people called those who went beyond, carried and protected the pole. At evenfall, the bearer drove the sacred pole into the ground on which they stood. At first light the following morning, the chiefs, captains, and Mingos gather around the pole. When the light of the fully risen sun struck the sacred pole, they saw the direction of its lean, and they called the people to follow. These were the Chickasaw, those that went beyond. And as they led the way, the people followed. At last, they came to a great river whose far bank they could not see. Undaunted by the father of all rivers, they built rafts and fashioned a cone for the pole bearer. For many weeks, they ferried the people across the mighty Mississippi. Exhausted from their labor, they rested. But at evenfall, they planted the sacred pole deeper into the ground on a low nearby hill. The chiefs, captains, and Mingos gathered around the pole at first light the following morning. And when the light of the fully risen sun struck the pole, it danced and sparkled in the morning light. The pole drove itself deeper into the ground and stood erect. Naniwaya, the pole bearer said, the leaning mountain. And the cry echoed throughout the tribe. Naniwaya, the Muscogee people were home.
Here we are today honoring the Native American history, honoring, with this opportunity this week to honor one of the survivors of the race massacre. Tulsa, Oklahoma is such a special place in that it's a place which was Native American country. It was the end of the Trail of Tears. It was one of the places of one of the most thriving black communities ever in the history of this country. Also, one of the worst race massacres in the history of this country. European settlers came in to try to make their way. This place right in the heart of America, heart of North America, you have this coming together of Europeans, African Americans, and Native peoples in a way that has been both glorious and disastrous. And what we're doing today here in this church, which is named All Souls, meaning for all people, we are honoring our Native brothers and sisters and siblings from the Native American communities whose land we are so blessed and honored to be on. By faith and history, we are all here together, and may we be able to make this a place of peace and goodness for all people and equality for all people. Don't everybody rush to 18th and Cheyenne, right away after service. There's not enough room to park if we all go there together, but I hope at some point during this month, you'll take a moment to go there and stand before that that great tree and remember the history of this place that we now know better than ever before, and just realize how significant it is where we live, right here. Those of us who are here, I know there's people from all over the world watching with us, but for those of us who are here, to be able to stand in that land, and then maybe even go on Friday to Greenwood and be there and be present, we can celebrate and honor and make sure it never happens again. Even as other parts of the world are disrupting and separating, and there's pulls in this country to pull us apart as well. May we be among those who continue to define America as a country, not a white Christian nation, as some will like to say, that this was land that was given by God for white European Christians. And that's a big movement right now out there. But there has to be people who stand up and say, no, this was not God's given land to white European Christians. This is a land for all people. So with that, may you go from here in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, and return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all life. Go and be blessed and be a blessing. Amen.